So maybe we can move on a little bit then to, I guess, I mentioned this. What is Gray's take on hyperliberalism? So this, as I said at the top, I think if you wanted to talk about maybe how liberalism is decaying, is what comes after liberalism, because I don't know if there are many like old school capital O capital S liberals left. It seems to me that you have these three sort of streams. One being post-liberalism, and I think Gray is a post-liberal in the sense that he thinks that liberalism's time has passed and it's now, um, you know, to take another of his terms, been devolved into hyperliberalism. But there are people who are like adherents or proponents of hyperliberalism, so those two things can be distinguished. And then the third stream is authoritarian liberalism, to use a term of Mike Wilkinson's, or illiberal liberalism, or however exactly you want to characterize it. Clearly, Gray is talking about hyperliberalism. This is what he thinks contemporary liberals do, and this is quite an influential formulation, or quite an influential term. And yeah, I'll just read out what this again fairly, but this I think is one of the best bits of the book. So maybe a slightly longer quote here as well, and then we can see if you guys think this is as good as I think it is. Maybe you'll just be like, well, this is the sort of stuff that George you've been saying for a little while. But yeah, so Gray writes, the origins of what has come to be called the woke movement are in the decay of liberalism. The movement is most powerful in English-speaking countries, tellingly the countries where classical liberalism was strongest. Beyond the Anglosphere, in China, the Middle East, India, Africa, and most of continental Europe, it is regarded with indifference, bemusement, or contempt. While its apostles regard it as a universal movement of human emancipation, it is recognized in much of the world as a symptom of Western decline, a hyperbolic version of liberalism in the West, professed during the brief period of seeming hegemony after the Cold War. Hyperliberal ideology plays a number of roles. It operates as a rationale for a failing variety of capitalism and a vehicle through which surplus elites struggle to secure a position of power in society. Insofar as it expresses a coherent system of ideas, it is the anti-Western creed of an antinomian intelligentsia that is ineffably Western. Psychologically, it provides an ersatz faith for those who cannot live without the hope of universal salvation inculcated by humanity. So, he then goes on to kind of to talk about how it's not cultural Marxism, it's not postmodernism, and basically say this is the revolt of the professional bourgeoisie. But I just wanted to then, we can kind of talk about some of these names and some of these kind of intellectual claims that he makes. But just to kind of wrap this quote off, he then says, today, what drives these struggles, i.e., the struggles of quote unquote wokeness or whatever, what drives these struggles is not just rivalry for power, but insecurity. Surplus elites are waging a war for economic survival in which hyperliberal values are commodified in the labour market. Woke is a career as much as a cult. By advertising their virtues, redundant graduates hope to gain a foothold on the crumbling ladder that leads to safety as one of society's guardians. So, yeah. So basically what I think is the best bit about this, just to be very clear, because some of this, you might have well heard this track before, or this tune well. But to say it's in the decay of liberalism, I think this is why he's a useful and interesting thinker to start with, is that he does say everything comes from a decay of something, or there is something bad at the start, often at the end of an intellectual kind of development. But yeah, he locates hyperliberalism in the decay, essentially the failure of liberalism. And I think a lot of people will not really get that point. They'll say it's a distortion, or it's kind of capture by a certain class fraction. But no, I think Gray is, I would say he is correct that the precursor for hyperliberalism is the decay of and self-undermining of classical liberalism.
Yeah, I wonder, the stuff about wokeness. We've heard, as you say, we've heard a lot of that before. It's fairly accepted, I think, as a critique nowadays. It kind of is out there anyway, and I don't object to a lot of it, at least as you present Gray's ideas, George. But it does seem, I wonder whether, like, okay, but so he's done this big grand like edifice of like talking about Leviathan and new Leviathans, so transformation, spanning 500 years, and then goes like, oh yeah, this new thing that's like literally just come about for the past, in earnest in the past decade. This is somehow like an integral part of it, and rather than something that's, bad and terrible and annoying, but like it's not like something central to how states function. In my that's
Yeah.
What
Okay.
woke? You mean woke?
yeah, like it's like woke has come and will go, and liberalism's decay is very important. Wokeness, I don't think so much.
I'm
Yeah,
not
I
sure you'd
just.
agree. I'm not sure.
I
Sorry,
think. I mean,
go on,
yeah.
Phil.
Go on. Well, it was only to say I disagree. I mean, I think it is. That ad of the Latina bureaucrat who worked for the CIA, who gave her, kind of presented her personal pronouns, called herself Latinx. I think she talked about, kind of all of her background and stuff as to why it was a recruitment ad for the CIA. It's one instance, but it convinced me that the decay of liberalism is a bigger thing than woke, but that woke is not an ephemeral or insignificant moment within it, and that it is something which is, however, and people might be frustrated and irritated by using this kind of presumptive word, I suppose, in these kinds of discussions, but as a placeholder for all those phenomena, we know what we mean by talking about woke, that it is indeed an important part of public life in the West. And unfortunately, I think it will continue to be so. So the decay of liberalism is a larger thing, it's true, but I think woke is an important part of that. And from the quote that you said, George, was great, even though nothing in it is, listeners on this podcast will be familiar with all the claims that he makes in that quote that you read out to us, even though it was very well kind of formulated and succinct. But one element, I think, it's precisely not universal in any meaningful way. I mean, I think that's the thing. He wants to make the claim that this is kind of a reiteration of liberal progressivism and universalism and all of those kind of grand claims. And though woke, I'm not even sure woke is supposed to apply everywhere, but even if it is supposed to be kind of replicated everywhere, it's precisely not universal, so it's a degraded liberalism for sure. But it seems like he wants to have it two ways, right? He wants to say on the one hand that it is liberal, essentially. It's just a kind of the same progressive liberal universalism, at the same time as saying that it's kind of decayed and broken down.
Yeah.
And you can't have it both ways, it seems to me. If it's decayed and broken down, then it clearly isn't the kind of the heroic universal liberalism that you might look to in centuries past and, give your admiration for. It's something else.
Well, hello, listener. I hope you like what you're hearing. It's a short excerpt from an episode that's available only to subscribers. Want to support BungaCast and get at least 2 original episodes a month? Sign up at patreon.com/BungaCast right now. $5 a month patrons get access to exclusive episodes like our in-depth analyses of present history. The big stuff that's happening right now. As well as chats with our regular guests, extended interviews with the key thinkers trying to understand our world today, and much more. For $10 a month, you join the BungaCast Reading Club, the place for those of us who are serious about equipping ourselves with the necessary intellectual tools for understanding the world and seeking to change it. Phil, George, and myself, Alex, look forward to seeing you there. Patreon.com/BungaCast.